Mr. Mitsotakis, thank you so much for being with Bloomberg TV today. Is your party, New Democracy, going to vote on the measures agreed between the Greek government and the creditors?
Well, first of all, let me clarify that when we talk about measures, we're really talking about two separate things. First thing has to do with the structural reforms which are included in the third program, which have been significantly delayed by the current government. We've always been in favor of important structural reforms, and if anything, we accuse the government that it is not implementing them and not assuming ownership of these reforms. The reason for that is that the creditors are requesting what we consider to be excessive fiscal measures which go beyond the end of the current program and affect 2019-2020. We're not going to vote for those fiscal measures. We've made that very clear. We feel that these fiscal measures are the cost that Greece unfortunately has to pay for the incompetence of this government. But if anything, on the structural reforms, we've been advocating the government to move faster in that direction, be it liberalization or privatization or deregulation. But unfortunately, on that front, we've seen very little progress.
If the second review drags on until July, until the deadline where Greece has to repay as much as 6 billion euros in debt, and then the government calls for the opposition to support the measures to avoid a Grexit, how would you react?
Look, I mean, I don't even want to contemplate that scenario. The reason being that we think that it is inconceivable that Greece will relive what it experienced during the first traumatic 6 months of 2015. I've made it very, very clear to Mr. Tsipras that he should complete the review as quickly as possible. Let me remind you that this review should have been completed a year ago. Had it been completed a year ago, nobody would be asking for additional fiscal measures. So the option that we drag on, we sort of blackmail again, hoping to find some sort of accommodating political solution is not an acceptable option by us. Mr. Tsipras has brought us into this mess. He's been claiming that he has a solid parliamentary majority, so it's up to him to deliver. But any delay right now is at the expense of the Greek economy and will significantly undermine the possibility that Greece will achieve the estimated forecast for growth in 2017.
What if your party family in Europe, the EPP with Angela Merkel, actually asks you to support the current measures?
We've never been asked to support this government. Again, I'm accountable to the Greek people. I've made it very, very clear that this is a bad government for Greece, that the sooner this government leaves, the better it will be for the country, and that the cost of this government remaining in power is significant for the Greek people and the Greek economy. The majority of Greeks seem to agree with this. I don't have a way to force an early election. However, I'm convinced that if it were to happen, we would win. Greece would get a better government, a much better government than it currently has, and certainly a government that would assume the true ownership of the necessary reforms to drag Greece out of this mess.
So you're still asking for snap elections?
This is a constant request for us in the sense that, and we don't associate it with the second review. These are two sort of independent issues. For us, this is a bad government. Even if the second review is completed, Greece will drag its feet. And it will drag its feet because there is no confidence to attract foreign investment. Because we have a government that is in this peculiar situation. It has to implement a liberal reform program in which it does not believe in. So this is not a sustainable situation for Greece medium to long term.
Do you think Greece has time for snap elections?
Well, snap elections take 3 weeks. So again, we've been dragging our feet for a year now. So it's not, for me, it's not a question of timing. The fundamental issue is: do we have the government that can lead us out of this crisis? Do we have the government that can avoid, at the end of the third program, a fourth program? Because what will happen in the middle of 2018, assuming even that we complete the review? Again, let me re-emphasize that I've been asking Mr. Tsipras to complete this review for the past 9 months. So it's not that we're against the completion of the review, but we see that we're again being dragged in a situation which is certainly detrimental for the average Greek people.
So if Alexis Tsipras does manage to close this second review before this July deadline, you think snap elections are off the table?
No, I'm not. What I'm saying is that we will keep on. Look, opposition parties. The job of opposition parties is to try to get into power, especially if they think that the current government is not doing a good job. Again, I'm in no position to predict when elections will take place. In any case, we will use the time available to become better. I think we've portrayed a very different image of what a traditional Greek opposition party usually does. We've shied away from populism. We've said very clearly that we're not going to make promises that we cannot keep. And we're putting forward our own program, which is an aggressive reform program that goes beyond the commitments that the country has assumed in the third program. So in any case, we will use the time to make our case to the Greek people more convincingly.
If you were elected, what would you do differently then?
What I would do differently is place all my emphasis on jobs and growth, because this is not clear. It is clearly not being done by the government.
But if the creditors have the exact same request that they have today, what can you do?
Let me first of all point out that a lot of the growth-enhancing measures which are necessary are not being implemented. Where is progress on privatization? Privatizations are important because they send a signal to the international investor community that Greece is open for business. Where are the simplification measures to make investing in Greece more attractive? Where are the specific sectoral policies that would leverage our comparative advantages, be it in agriculture, in renewable energy, in tourism? We don't see any of those. And we don't see any of those because Syriza is not a typical social democratic government. This is a government that comes from the hard left. It's a government that is implementing the program by necessity and not because it believes in it. And obviously this is not creating the proper sort of context to establish the necessary confidence. We are a center-right, pro-reform, liberal party that is placing private investment, entrepreneurship, job creation at the center of our program. This is what Greece needs today. And that is why, again, we believe that we cannot afford to lose time. The quicker we have a political change in Greece, the better it will be for the country. But we would do a lot of things very, very differently from the current government. And the one thing that we would also do differently is that we would make it clear that we sever our ties with the old clientelistic state. Because Syriza is again repeating all the mistakes of the old parties in building its own new army of political clients by hiring people right, left and center.
So very quickly, how would you... what would be your ideal policy mix? Would it be less taxes or less spending?
Look, we've said very clearly that there's still room to cut fat when it comes to public spending, but we need lower taxes. There's no doubt about that. And we're also claiming, and we're leading this effort to convince our creditors that we also need lower primary surpluses. I've been making this case for a long time now. Maintaining primary surpluses of 3.5% for a decade is not sustainable. Greece needs a little bit more fiscal space. How would it use this fiscal space? To lower taxes, not to increase government spending. So I want a smaller and more efficient public administration, and I want a competitive economy with lower taxes that will attract investment and grow the economy. So it's a different policy mix from the one that is currently being imposed by the government.
Do you believe a fourth bailout has to be done?
The closer we get to the mid sort of June 2018 deadline without any real progress, the greater the likelihood, and that would be tragic for Greece to contemplate that we'll again be stuck in a program for the foreseeable future. So again, we're losing time. Had the government been able to stick to its initial schedule, we would already have had access to QE, which is again something which is necessary. But why has it been delayed for so long? It has been delayed for so long because the government has not completed the review according to the schedule.
So the ECB is not including Greek bonds into quantitative easing at the moment. If you were an investor, would you buy Greek bonds?
Well, if I were to look at the medium to long term prospect of Greece, I think I would be quite optimistic about Greece, in spite of the shortfallings of this government. I think that whenever a political change will take place, there is going to be a government that is clearly going to be more friendly to the international investor community. So, I like the long-term prospect of the Greek economy, and I do think that, and I hope that at some point, once the review is finally completed, that we will have more visibility on the debt side, and that the Greek bonds will also be included in the QE program. But again, Mr. Tsipras has spent so much time talking about a debt write-off that he has not come up with a realistic proposal about what sort of interventions we need on the debt side.
But in the short term, right now, would you buy Greek bonds
as an investor? Well, that's not my
job.
My job is not to advise people what they should be doing, in the short term. Again, I am hoping and I'm wishing for this review to be completed as soon as possible in the best possible way. I'm afraid that it will be completed with a significant cost for the Greek taxpayer, especially the weaker Greeks. But that is the cost of Mr. Tsipras' personal incompetence. So I'm in no position to give investment advice, but I still think that Greece as a country has significant and substantial medium to long-term prospects and has a lot to offer.
Are you concerned about the election cycle in Europe? France, the Netherlands, then Germany. How is that going to complicate any Grexit solution to avoid a Grexit?
Well, first of all, I don't even want to talk about Grexit. And it's not an issue we should be talking at all about. Every time the Grexit discussion creeps into the public debate, it does damage to Greece. Our spreads are increasing. Grexit is not an option for Greece. Should probably tell that to some of the Syriza MPs who keep coming back to the issue. But we, as the main centre-right party, make it very clear Grexit is not an option. We will also do whatever it takes for Greece to remain at the centre of the European integration project. Also looking forward to the discussion about the future of Europe. Obviously, domestic electoral cycles are of importance. I never comment on domestic politics on other countries. I just hope that 2017 is going to be the year where we sort of push back against this rise of populism. And if we were to have an election in Greece in 2017, it would mean the defeat of populism in a country which first elected a populist government into power. And that, I think, is going to be a positive message, not just for Greece, but also for Europe.
But if we have changes in the governments in France, in the Netherlands, and possibly Germany, how do you think this new landscape could react to a new Greek crisis?
Well, I'm hopeful that we will have reasonable governments in all three countries that will look at the bigger picture. Again, as much as we want to focus on what's happening in the European context, we need to put our own house in order. And that is why I focus so much on the ownership of the current reform program, because that is within our control. And that's where we should be placing all our emphasis. And that is where, unfortunately, the government is failing.
Will Donald Trump have any impact on the IMF position?
I don't know. But again, it seems right now very, very likely that the IMF will participate in the program. And on that, to that extent, I think that this is today the most likely scenario. I don't see that changing.
So you don't have any concerns about Donald Trump in power at the moment and how this could impact the solution?
Well, obviously, we hear a lot of interesting things coming out of Washington. I still think that it is in the interest of the United States not to deviate from the sort of the consensus that has been established for many decades regarding its role, its position in international organizations, its position within NATO, and the value it places on the sort of transatlantic alliance. I think that eventually there's not going to be a significant shift in U.S. policy on those issues.
Finally, how are you planning to deal with the internal divisions of your party?
Well, thank God we don't have many. In the sense, look, we're a big party. I was elected a year ago with a clear mandate to reform the party. I was the outsider when I was elected, but I think I've demonstrated a true commitment to change our party, to bring in new people, to renew our ideas. We're doing very, very well in the polls, so I think that people accept that we've been doing a good job. But there are no internal issues when it comes to the strategy of the party. But again,
even on the voting of the future measures.
We had our internal debates. There was no different view on that. But again, we're a democratic party, and we need to learn to discuss. And then, the minority needs to go along with the wishes of the majority. But it is very, very clear what the strategy of the party is, and it has not been challenged.
If you could force snap elections, when would you like to see them happen?
Well, I have been calling for a snap election for quite some time now, so I would probably turn the clock back. Again, I've made it very, very clear that I decouple, the request for a snap election, which is a constant request, from the completion of the second review. These are two separate issues. I look at the long-term prospect of the country. And my concern is that this government, even if it succeeds in completing the review, and we all hope that this will happen sooner rather than later, will not be able to deliver the growth that the country needs.
Mr. Mitsotakis, thank you so much.
Thank you.